Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokis, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. Hi, y'all, and welcome to another episode of No Wrong Notes. This week's episode is another exciting interview, this time with Gökçe Kutsal, where we discuss performance anxiety. I came across Gökçe's content on Instagram and was immediately impressed with how she spoke about performance anxiety with such a warm, compassionate, and straightforward approach. We connected online, and I knew that I had to chat with her about this topic that so many singers and other musicians struggle with. I had such a good conversation with Gökçe. She is such a kind and thoughtful coach and teacher, and I know that you'll enjoy this episode. A little bit about Gökçe before we get started. She is a multifaceted professional whose career seamlessly integrates architecture, acoustics, and music. Beyond her architectural pursuits, which you'll hear a little bit about in this episode, she is a dedicated performance coach and voice teacher with over 1,800 hours of teaching and coaching experience. Specializing in performance anxiety and confidence coaching, she helps musicians and creatives overcome stage fright, procrastination, and self-criticism. Her coaching work empowers artists to rediscover joy and confidence, whether in auditions, on stage, on camera, or in the practice room. All right, let's get to this week's episode with Gökçe. All right, so I am here with Gökçe, and thank you for coming on the No Wrong Notes podcast.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure because I've been following you for quite a while and I love what you're doing. So it's been an honor, really. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Yes, I love your content too, and I'm so glad that we could talk today. To get started here, I would love it if you could tell listeners who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are in your career as a music performance coach.
Oh, so it's a funny story, really. Let me start off by saying I am a performance and confidence coach to musicians who have tried all of the traditional advice. Like just perform more, gain more experience, take beta blockers, try therapy, have a glass of wine, that kind of thing. But they still feel like they cannot show the full extent of their abilities and feel like they are the thing that's in their own way. So one of my clients actually jokingly called me her music companion, like a sober companion. And I thought, actually, you know what? It kind of describes what I do better than calling it just coaching. So I come in if you're preparing for an audition or if you want to get your own project on the road and you want to take the next step for your career, but you feel stuck. I'm the person who joins in and who is basically there with you along the journey, not just handing out advice or giving you little pep talks, but helping you untangle what's really going on in your head and why certain things might be tripping you up. And that's when I give you systems and strategies to navigate those and help you figure out how to actually enjoy the process of making music and turning it into a career. So it's not about fixing anything. There's nothing wrong with you or any of my clients, but it's about helping you feel like you again. When you sing or when you play, that version of you that once loved music and wanted to make a career out of it, because music is the most amazing thing in the world. And this is where it gets the funny story part, because what I just said describes me so well, and yet I couldn't pursue music myself. Okay, I will keep this short. But growing up, I wanted to be an opera singer. And I still think opera is like the best thing ever, maybe after musical theater. But right when I was graduating from high school, the university I wanted to go to closed down their opera department. And I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to make of my life. So I had to make a quick decision. And I thought, what's the next best thing for me? I ended up in design and architecture. Yeah, that's the funny part. But I never stopped singing or loving music. I was studying vocal technique, voice models, trying out popular singing styles. I even had a period as a radio host. And many years passed. I'm talking about 10, 15 years. And I became a self proclaimed voice geek. So I had the chance to study voice pedagogy in a master's program, and I jumped on the opportunity. At the time, I was teaching voice to singers and speakers. So it kind of made sense to me to study this further in a formal program. But something in my teaching didn't make as much sense. So I could give the best imagery, the most amazing physiological cues, or try every exercise in the literature. But sometimes I would notice that my students just couldn't do what they wanted to do. And it wasn't like a physical problem that was keeping them from belting or singing loudly or with correct intonation. It was almost like there was a part of their own mind getting in the way and judging them for not getting it right at the first try. Or let me think. Um, Something that would always come up was not liking a particular sound in their own voice or not trusting themselves to make a mistake and just figure it out as they go. So it was like their brain would hit the brakes before the voice even had a chance. And I started to notice this wasn't about technique anymore. It was about fear, it was about perfectionism, it was about past experiences with teachers, peers, colleagues, even parents. So it was more about identity. And that's when things clicked. And I noticed that if I wanted to help people actually use their voices in the way they dreamed of, as in confidently, freely, joyfully, I had to understand what was going on under the surface, not just in the larynx, but in the nervous system, in the mind, the self talk, the pressure that they would be putting on themselves every time they open their mouth. So after many coaching trainings, different modalities, approaches, my master's project turned into performance anxiety research, basically. And that's where my work really started to shift from voice teacher to musician coach. From here's how you do it to let's figure out what's stopping you from doing it yourself.
Oh man, it sounds like you've had a really diverse sort of path to where you are now. Especially like the working in radio too is like that's so interesting. You've had that, experience. But I especially love how your work really considers the whole individual. It considers the whole musician, the whole singer, because I think so often in the advice that singers are given, it's like, well, if you just practice, if your technique works for you, then nerves aren't a problem. And that's just not true. So I really appreciate your no nonsense and straightforward approach to navigating performance anxiety and taking in that whole picture. What is one thing, and this, I think maybe some of this kind of touches upon what we were just talking about and what you were just speaking to, but what is one big thing that you believe gets missed or misconstrued or is misunderstood when it comes to this topic specifically of performance anxiety?
Choosing just one thing is going to be a little bit difficult for me because it's so broad, but I will try. And the first thing that comes to my mind is we talk so much about getting rid of nerves and building confidence and feeling free on stage. But I feel like this is a misleading path because it's never about getting rid of nerves. If you keep thinking about, I have to get rid of nerves, well, what you're doing is essentially keeping it at the forefront of your mind. You're not letting that go. So it stays with you. And this is where it becomes a little bit problematic because the goal is not to be fearless, but it's to trust yourself even if there is fear, even in the presence of fear. And I feel like one of the most important things here is that we try to get rid of the fear. We try to get rid of the nerves by pretending they don't exist, or we try to suppress them, or we try to, well, basically do everything we can to get away from that uncomfortable feeling. It never works out that way when you are actually in the performance setting. Yes, you're going to have something that's going to distract you. You're going to have something that scares you. You're going to have a very judgmental person sitting in the first row. Like, something is going to go wrong and it's going to throw you off. So it's never about just getting rid of nerves. It's about building this flexible psychological perspective where you are able to adapt in the moment without making things worse. So, in a way, performance anxiety is like the symptom, but it's not the root issue that we're dealing with. And the root problem is usually how someone relates to these feelings of uncertainty or failure or their own expectations from themselves. That is what's causing the performance anxiety. That is what's throwing you off when you have to perform under pressure. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. Oh, man. And I think, whew, you share a lot of really good information that I also think about often in terms of like, it's not getting rid of the performance anxiety or the fear. It's learning to be like, I don't want to say comfortable, but it's learning to be flexible with that fear. Just kind of like existing with that fear, right? Allowing the fear to kind of be there. And I sometimes like to visualize it like at the tip of my nose, like imagining that it's like right there and I'm just kind of sitting with it almost.
I love that.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's like, yes, it's really, yeah, you're speaking to a lot of things that I very much agree with. And then on the other side of things, like I think that when it comes to this issue of performance anxiety, this can manifest in different ways. Like I've seen it manifest in different ways with my own students, and I see it manifest in different ways in myself. What do you think is the sneakiest way in which you've seen performance anxiety show up that people may not even realize is performance anxiety? Because I think that we can sit here and talk about being with the fear and being with that anxiety, but someone may not even know that they're experiencing it. Like they might just think, oh, well, I'm like, super nervous, or like they're feeling something physical that maybe they're not even thinking about as related to performance anxiety.
I love this question because it's kind of a like the root or the trunk of the tree is the performance anxiety, but it has so many little branches that we often don't see when we look at it from afar. So, one thing that is really, really sneaky is perfectionism because it shows up as just having high standards for yourself. And then you end up waiting to feel ready to take an opportunity or try something that might be a little bit risky. So you're essentially sabotaging yourself because there's this fear underneath that is dressed up as I'm not ready yet. And then there's this cycle that we get stuck in. We feel not ready, so we are constantly preparing for something that kind of never comes. So we're stuck in that over preparing, obsessively reworking state because it gives us a feeling of control. We can control if we are still preparing for something. But if we get it on the road, if it's out there, if it's for people to judge or evaluate us or like or not like, then that's a risk. That's a threat. So it feels out of our control and we would try to avoid it. The mind is very smart. It convinces us that by not showing up at all, we don't have the chance to fail publicly. So it's keeping us safe. And this is how we procrastinate on stuff, how we put things off. And it's so unfortunate because there's no way we can know if something is ready or not until we do it. You will never feel ready. There's never going to be a point where you feel like, okay, I made it. I am perfect. My technique is amazing. I'm a very expressive singer. I'm going to be amazing. That day will never come. So you might as well just put yourself out there and gain experience along the way. And by experience, I don't mean the experience as in just perform more and you will get over the performance nerves. It's not that. This will give you experience in how your unique instrument works, how your voice works, how your mind works, what you like, what you don't like, what you would do differently the next time. And this is the type of experience that I'm talking about. And we cannot have it unless we put ourselves out there.
Yes. Oh man, you hit something really hard and deep within me because I am like, I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist.
Oh, me too.
So all of what you were saying about perfectionism, I definitely see that at times in myself. Like I'm not perfect at healing, and like working through those parts. But can definitely relate. And I also see that in my own students. Um, Now, kind of pivoting to something that's kind of along these lines, part of what I've found as a singer and teacher is that when a singer feels empowered as an individual and as a singer, anxiety kind of takes a back seat. So it's like maybe it's this going for it, right? This kind of trying and doing it despite the kind of voice that's saying, no, you're not ready yet, right? And then sometimes, like, just doing that helps a singer feel more empowered. They're like, oh, wow, look, I did it, and I can actually do this thing. Uh, but I think that you kind of have to, in those situations, it's like really about the action, right? And so there's an action and a kind of moving past a block, which is in that case, it's more related to perfectionism. Speaking to maybe some other blocks that singers face, from what you've seen in your work, what are the most common blocks to singers and musicians feeling empowered? Obviously, we've talked about perfectionism, but I guess what are some other ways in which you've seen singers and musicians struggle?
That's definitely an identity issue. So let me clarify because it doesn't make a lot of sense when I say it as an identity issue. Sometimes we feel like we have labels attached to us, like I'm the serious one. I'm not a natural performer. I'm an introvert. And all of these fixed beliefs come with a sense of this is who I am, and there's nothing I can do to change this. So I might as well not try. That is, I believe, the biggest problem that we have. Because then it results in us externalizing our worth. We look at other people to tell us if we are worthy enough, if we are good enough. And in the current climate, like if you're an introvert, if you are a more serious person, if you are a little bit more sensitive, you're not going to get that kind of validation from other people because the industry at the moment kind of celebrates the natural performer, the extroverted, the loud one, the very confident person. So you're going to feel like, maybe I'm not meant to do this. That is the saddest thing ever. So I believe the most important thing is not attaching a label to yourself, but actually looking at what makes you you, what makes you unique, what makes you different from other people, and really leaning into that instead of comparing yourself to others and trying to be someone else. Because this is when you get this kind of agency over your own music and your career. Like, if you're always looking at other people to tell you you're good enough, you're worthy enough, you deserve this, or on the other side, maybe you don't deserve this yet, it kind of feels like you're the passenger in your own car. You are always told what to do, when to do, how to do it. It's basically a lack of agency that we feel. But if you make your own choices, if you decide that this is what I care about, I want to share the song of my people with other people so that the culture lives, then it becomes your own agency. It becomes your own decision. It becomes your own value, and you can follow it, even if there's a voice in your mind that says, you're not ready, you're not good enough, no one will like it. Like, you don't have to keep listening to that.
Yes, I think something I like to think about or visualize in my mind, because it makes me think of like the ego, and you kind of like talk about like identity and things like that, and that kind of attachment to an identity, or like sometimes you'll hear it referred to, like I said, the ego. um I sometimes like to envision that whatever, I don't want to call them negative parts, but maybe they're like parts of me that maybe keep me from acting on things or keep me from living in the way that I want to live. These sort of like anxious or perfectionist parts, I almost like to imagine that they're like in the car with me, like you said, like a passenger. Where I like to imagine that they're in the car with me, and I like to sort of speak to those parts and say, look, I'm in the driver's seat. Y'all can come along for the ride. Y'all can be here and we can be here together. But, I'm in the driver's seat. Y'all cannot be in the driver's seat. So, what you were saying about kind of being a passenger to, these different things that we struggle with, these different identities that we're attached to, that makes me think of that. And I think you're exactly right in that it's like, maybe when it comes to things that we think of as roadblocks, like that, like you were saying, being an introvert and saying, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm not, like, that's too scary. I can't do that. Those are sort of like symptoms of like the deeper thing, which is being almost too attached to these identities, right? And I don't think that we consciously attach ourselves to these identities. I think a lot of it is like conditioning from like when we're growing up and from our environment and things like that. But it's like even just taking a step back and separating ourselves a little bit from like, oh, okay, this is maybe not who I am at my deep core. This is something that, I may be attached to. I think that that is so, so important. I wanted to ask on a practical level too, obviously we're talking about these kind of more intellectualized concepts, these things that are more internal. What do you think on a practical level, maybe on an external level, what are some of the easiest things that singers and musicians can do today to help relieve their own performance anxiety? And I know that there's not a magic pill for any of this, but I think like there are like certain things we can do externally, even if that is doing more internal work, like journaling or something like that, working through these things. But I guess what is like something that you think is a really helpful tool in this process?
That's actually a very easy one, and it's just by breathing. There's this one thing that I like to teach my clients the first time they come to me, and it's called a physiological sigh. So basically, you take in a nice breath in, you fill up your lungs, and then on top of that, you take another deep breath without exhaling first. So it's like deep breath in, stop, another deep breath in. And then you let it out on an ah sound, almost like you're just plopping down into your favorite chair at the end of a long day. And this signals to our nervous system that it's okay, it's safe, we are safe, we can relax, and if there's any kind of stressor, it's gone now. So on a physiological level, it releases that kind of tension that you might be feeling. And
Yes.
this might be enough to move away from those anxious thoughts. If not, then there's a little bit more mental side to it. But sometimes, just sometimes, this might be enough.
I love that. Breathing every time for me, like coming back to the breath, either through doing these physiological sighs, which I think, heard about on the Huberman Lab podcast like a couple of years ago, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Either doing that or like other breathwork exercises. Oh man, it's like an instant relief, because I think too with these processes, especially like whether it's breathing or another somatic practice, anything that is in the body, I think, gets you out of your head a little bit too, which I think with performance anxiety, it's like, yes, that can manifest in physical ways, but especially I think it can be a very mental thing, a mental experience as well for some people. So getting back into the body, I think, is so, so helpful. On a lighter note, I want to ask, obviously you're a performance anxiety coach, you work with people on this topic. What has been your most embarrassing moment on stage or in the audition room, and how did you navigate that situation? So maybe in a situation where you did find yourself like oh my God, like I'm freezing, or like, I don't know. For me, it was always like my legs would shake. And that was kind of how performance anxiety would manifest. That was like when I was like way a young one, like when I was in high school and things like that. But yeah, I guess like, have you ever had those moments on stage, like a really embarrassing moment, and how did you deal with it?
Oh boy. Okay. So, like I said, I'm a bit of a nerd. So, I completed my first master's program in architecture and design. But I was, towards the end of that, I was auditioning for another master's program in music performance. And it would be my first ever audition. So, because my undergrad and first master's degree was in architecture, I had never sang in front of a panel waiting to be judged and evaluated. And I can remember walking into the room. My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears. At the time, I also remember feeling like the air is weirdly warm. My palms are sweating, and I didn't even sing a note. And the singing went okay, I think, at least, because I barely remember it. I was so wired. And then came the sight reading test. I looked at the page, I saw the rest symbol, and my brain just shut down. It went completely blank. I mean, I could see the rest symbol. I knew what it meant. I just couldn't remember the word for it. And I'd been reading music since I was like 8. I knew it was tacit. In that moment, nothing. I could just hear the sound of the panel flipping their papers, and my breathing was getting louder. I couldn't even say rest instead of tacit, so I just paused awkwardly between the notes. Like, actually went silent. It was so cringy. And I can laugh about it now, kind of. Maybe my cheeks are going a little bit red, but at the time, I felt like I wanted the floor to swallow me. I couldn't get that single moment out of my mind for the rest of the audition. It's a bit of an understatement. I couldn't get it out of my mind for like the rest of the week. And that moment taught me a lot about how the mind can go totally blank under pressure. Before that, I had no idea this was even a thing. I hadn't heard about it, let alone experienced it myself. So it was an eye-opening experience in a very, very bad way.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy. You gotta love sight reading, right? I feel like there are so many. I mean, I've had experiences. I know other people have had lots of experiences with like just horror stories when it comes to sight reading. Oh man, I'm glad that we can laugh about it now, for sure. But I think it's also like really, it speaks to something really interesting where it's like, again, you can practice these skills, you can practice sight reading, but again, like sometimes no amount of practice, like you can practice something over and over and over, and still like performance anxiety can get in the way. It's not like practice makes it any easier. And I think too with like sight reading too, it's a lot of new information that you're seeing. Like it's a new sample, it's like a new example, and your brain is like, what? So wow, oh my goodness. I wanted to ask, kind of before we wrap up here, are there any projects that you're currently working on, either as a singer or a teacher, that you'd like to promote?
Oh, I would love to tell you a little bit about my new training. It's called Develop Enjoyable Music Practice. Because I've been talking so much about performance anxiety, but I realized that so many of us are not actually taught how to practice. We're just told to go home, repeat it a few times, and you will get it somehow. So this is going to be the program for musicians who are tired of going through the motions and getting bored out of their minds as they practice something, and those who want to build a system that actually works for their mind, body, and lifestyle. So it's not about doing more, practicing for longer, or working harder. It's more about making practice something that builds you up instead of wears you down and makes you regret becoming a musician in the first place. So towards the end of
Nice.
May, yeah, I'm planning to do like a 3-day stories event on Instagram called Practice Reimagined, to share some quick practice tips that you can try today and just see if it makes a difference for you. It's a like totally free, totally low pressure on Instagram so you can just see it without hopping on a Zoom call, and more like a just brain food, really.
That program sounds so exciting. I definitely have students that will come to me sometimes and be like, "How do I practice?" Like the going home and just singing until I get it right. It doesn't really work, or it'll work, but it's like, is that it? So that definitely sounds like something. At least I know my singers would be interested in. So I'll definitely include that in the show notes.
Well, I just wanted to share that sometimes musicians come to me and they're like in their 40s, they have an established career, they have been professional musicians for a very long time, and they still tell me they have no idea how to practice. So it's not just the teenagers, it's not just the younger or newer musicians. It's like we're not given these tools or these approaches. Like we don't have a framework or a strategy to how we practice. We just go through the motions, we just repeat it 10 more times and call it a day. So it makes sense to me to, well, share all of the tools that I gathered along the way with all of the musicians that I love working with. So there's that.
I love it. I love it. Would you like to do some rapid fire before we wrap up?
Yes, I would love that.
All right. My first question is coffee or tea?
Always tea. I'm trying to develop
Tea.
a taste for coffee, but it's a work in progress. So
What kind of tea?
I happen to be an Earl Grey addict.
Oh, nice. Cool. Very cool.
It's what I have right here.
Oh, lovely, lovely. What is your favorite book or a book that you think everybody should read at least once in their life?
That's a tough one. Okay. So growing up, my all-time favorite would be Tintin books. He's basically a young journalist who goes on adventures, and it's a like a graphic novel. And it used to be like so fun for me. It's like my go-to at the moment when I feel like, okay, I need something like something to read with my tea and like wrapped up in a warm blanket, and I have the cat with me. So it's like a cozy reading comfort book would be Tintin books. It's written as Tintin.
Oh, Tintin. Oh, nice, nice,
Oh,
nice.
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yes. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, awesome. I love that. I feel like yeah, we all need like a comfort book, right? My next question is, what is the best place you've ever traveled to?
Oh, I have to say Copenhagen, because that's where I took the singing courses. And it was always like this, it has this feeling for me, at least personally, that this association with trying new things and meeting new people and having the safe space to sing and make music and have fun. But I mean, of course, the weather is not everyone's favorite, so I cannot tell you much about that.
I love that. I am just like staring in envy as an American. I'm like, oh, I wish I could go. Like, oh, it just sounds so, it sounds so, I've like wanted to visit like Copenhagen and a lot of like Northern European, like Northern Europe. So love it. What is a song that is stuck in your head right now? Or like a song that you've had on repeat?
Hmm. I actually go to this little choir just for fun, and the last song that we sang is The Lullaby of Broadway. And it just keeps like it's on repeat on my mind, going up in a loop, and it's so fun, but it's also keeping me up at night, which is kind of on theme because on Broadway, you don't sleep until the milkman comes. So
Nice,
that's a
nice.
song.
And what is the best advice you've ever received, either singing related or otherwise, music related or otherwise?
Just go for it. Yeah, this is the thing that my old mentor colleague would say when I was teaching at the university. And I would feel like, I'm just a baby. What do I do? How do I do this? How can I be teaching other people? Who am I to teach? And she would say, just go for it. You're better than you think. You'll learn it along the way. Like I said, you never feel ready when you get started with something. you become ready along the way. So I found this is like the most practical advice that I ever received. And I've been trying to follow it ever since.
That is excellent advice. Well, thank you, Gökçe, for coming on my podcast, the No Wrong Notes podcast.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys, that is it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Gökçe. I know that I learned so much in talking with her in our conversation, and I hope that you learned some things as well that you can use next time you've got a performance or audition. And if you want to check out the program that she mentioned, the practice program called Develop, you can find that link in the show description to join the waitlist. Also, you can follow her on Instagram. That tag will also be in the show description. If you enjoyed this episode, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and review on your platform of choice. And in the meantime, happy singing, y'all.